we're still covering the Fantasia Film Festival in Montreal, and Brandon's come to join us. So last week it was me and Adriana. Adriana has been an absolute trooper. She's been seeing a ton of these with me. I think what was the math today? On 14 days, I've seen 32 movies. So I'm that's not counting shorts either.
So by the time the festival's over, you would have 40 plus movies under your belt in like a 2 week.
Yeah. So kudos. 2 full weeks now. 32 movies. So that's I'm going through it, and it's definitely like the days are blurry. But we're technically at the time of recording, it's day 3 for you. Of
I'm fresh. I have fresh legs, fresh eyes. Fresh brain.
Fresh eyes. We'll get to that because at the 4th movie we saw yesterday in the same day, he decidedly did not have fresh eyes. But we have lots to cover. But what have you enjoyed? Like, how's the fest been so far for you? This is your first ever. Yeah. I went last year at least, but this is your first ever.
Yeah, first ever Fantasia Fest. Got the press pass for the media. Feel very honored. Really enjoyable experience. Really good crowds. I think I was joking that we did the Fantastic Four video, and I saw that on like the opening weekend, full of kids, full of people, big IMAX screen. People were like making, ironically, like lion noises. And I come to Fantasia, and the crowds are absolutely amazing, very engaging. And if you've never been to Fantasia, when the lights go down, they play the final ads. You get these black cat eyes that come on, and the green eyes, and everyone starts going meow.
And I intentionally did not tell you about that either, because I didn't know at all when I first went. And when people started meowing around me, I was like, "What the fuck? What is going on?"
And then some of the ads people get really into is it Tebu Taxi?
Teo Taxi.
Teo Taxi. Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird one to explain because if you haven't been, there is nothing like it. It is such a weird environment, and especially later into the festival, jokes carry over from year over year. I think one of the movies we saw yesterday, one of the ads in front of it was our ad last year was really confusing and no one understood it. I remember that ad because and it was so funny. When I saw that the first night, I died. Because I was I fucking remember turning to Adriana and being like, what the fuck did they even do?
It was my 4th or 5th time seeing that ad. And to be fair, around the 3rd time I saw it, I feel like I missed most of the ad because it's so quick. But they also have a typo in it, I'm pretty certain, for next year. It says, hire to your visual effects. They're easy, but they have the wrong version of there, I think, unless I'm illiterate.
I don't know. I didn't notice it.
I'll point it out tomorrow, but I swear it's there because I feel like next year, last year, you thought there's too many misspelled words.
There is a different ad with a typo in it, which but it's a weird environment for that. But to me, it's genuinely the best theatrical environment.
Very pure. Everybody wants to be there.
Perfect crowds.
Nobody's taking bathroom breaks. Yeah. Nobody's pulling their phone out. Phones come out only at the end when there's people discussing the film and
Q&As and stuff like that.
Really, really amazing crowds. Nobody, I think, has been shushed in any of the screenings we've been to.
Well, there's the shushing at the meowing, right? That's it's a known thing. I've heard people. It's a weird thing. Well, people are like meow, shh, shh, and they shush themselves, and so it's been it's quite the thing, but it's they pop for the ads, but those ads are only ever made for this,
and they're very localized too. And that's the problem. We joked about we don't get hung up on the nuances of the low budget ads, but there's a good ad for the Montreal airport that's very cinematic and emotional, but where everyone's nah, dog, we don't care. We want Teo Taxi. Yeah. We want the meow from the cat.
Just a little good jingle, a memorable jingle. Yeah. If you have the words, literally the crowds. I've never heard of Teo Taxi before this Fantasia trip, and I live in Montreal.
Yeah.
But then literally the crowds pop, and the whole crowd will yell Teo Taxi at the bid and everything. It's unlike anything else, but again, genuinely is one of my favorite parts. Is that in last week's episode, the first movie Adriana went to see was unfinished.
Yeah.
It had the green screen and all the details, and we talked about it more back then. But she's that movie with that crowd, thank God, because the crowd started laughing, and it became a big thing for the crowd. So it's if you're gonna, good or bad, the highs and the lows, that's the place to see it. And we had my first Cineplex experience in the middle of this was to go see The Naked Gun.
Yes.
And I went through again probably whatever it would have been 20 movies at that point. no issues. First movie back in a Cineplex theater, multiple phones. Someone did a flash, like a picture from the very front row, and like the big flash on the screen. I was like, oh,
nothing says I love movies like taking a photo full flash middle of the movie to let people know you're in a movie theater.
It was so
obnoxious.
Bad. But like again, never happens at Fantasia, and it's just such a great. I'm glad you've had a good time with it because like again, the crowds are genuinely the best part, and the movies are like very diverse and wide ranging. You can
Super
get all
diverse.
kinds of things. We'll come through that and as we kind of dive in. But I don't know if you have any other things specific you want to just dive in, or has there been anything else about the fest so far that's really kind of stood out?
I say like I think what I like about the festival is it's presented very professionally, but it's a very casual fit. Like it's very unassuming, like like again, I'm wearing what looks like a gym teacher's outfit, like shorts, long socks, a t-shirt, and a ball cap, and you've got that all the way up to people wearing like full-blown suits for these premieres, and it's nice. It's not like there's other film festivals that are like hoity-toity, but I think it's very approachable. It's like it's a good time. You get again a lot of diversity. Montreal's a great city for that. Concessions are pretty reasonably priced. I know that's my big thing. But yeah, no, all in all, I think it's been a really good environment, and it's especially when you are seeing 40 movies in 2 weeks, like it's a good thing. It's a good environment because otherwise, most people will tap out. So.
Yeah, and like the people that put it on and the volunteers, like everybody's doing phenomenal out there, and like it's crazy, a lot of work and like a lot of screenings every day and stuff like that, and a lot of people. But again, like it's just like the perfect kind of balance between like the right people, the right crowds, the right movies, and all of that. So it's definitely and like the accessibility part of it, where like you said, like you can just show up, but then people are there. Like I remember last year, this year even they had Danny Elfman was there for a short, and they did a screening of Nightmare Before Christmas and all kinds of stuff. So just even get to hear from people like that's always really cool too. So
100%, and even like interacting with people in the crowds, like. Especially, as we'll get into with like some of the themes of some of these movies this year coming out of, the pandemic and coming into like the 2025 era. The decade's almost half done now, and we're catching up with what we've been.
Say that, bro.
Yeah, but it's nice seeing some of these fresher films and fresher creative voices, especially in the short films where they're ideal for filmmakers. It's you're in your apartment with your girlfriend who works from home, and they have a fever dream nightmare. That's a good short film. That was called Hey Babe. Hey Babe. And then the other one, it was called Necessity. It was these are the two I've seen, and basically it's a GLP-1 or Ozempic kind of horror, which I think is ripe for the time, and I do like it. It's again people in these locations, their apartment, but my point of this is we're really in this time now where I think films and whatnot are catching up with where we've been for the last 5 years, and it's really lovely seeing that portrayed here, and then on those themes of like being trapped inside or cooped up, especially with moviegoers, like we are kind of an indoor cat bunch. Going out to these crowds, you do see and have these moments with people, and it's so friendly and inviting. And like I think we made conversation with people behind us and in front of us while waiting for the show to start at least 3 or 4 times. And typical guys, we never ask each other's names. I know that guy's favorite letterbox movies, but don't know his name. But it's like it's again the crowds, the atmosphere compared to I guess maybe even like TIFF that I've been to a little bit on. This just felt very more like approachable. Like I feel like if you've never been to a film festival, like we've been to the one in Austin, that was a really good first foray. But this I felt like was really, again, Canadian, very, very good atmosphere. I can't keep saying that.
No, it really is. And like, again, the locations I feel like even forward to just like, again, it's just like the intimidation factor was really not there at all. And it is a welcoming spot too. And like I said, and because it's so long too, I feel like that diversity in the content is like really there. Like one of the ones I saw last week too was, I think it was based on like a Japanese manga or whatever. Like that's never in my wheelhouse normally, but I was like, it sounds interesting. I'll go see it. And that's easily my favorite thing about the festival is that like last year, I think I saw like only 13 last year over the kind of 2 weeks, and so this time I've really dialed it up. But like it was like that's my favorite part, and my brother even did the similar thing where he's like, I have no idea what I'm sitting down for, and just like kind of having it's my buddy Sam we've talked about before. Like I tell him the showtime, like, can you be there at 7? He's like, yep, and we just go, and he knows nothing.
I mean, that's been half of our experience where I think we're seated. They go, Teo Taxi. I go, what was this one again?
Oh, dude, and I don't even know.
Idea.
I literally created my calendar and I've just been following it, and like that's my whole like I don't
Which
know what day
like
it is.
You're
anymore.
Gifting yourself. You're like, these all look. You did the research for a day.
Yeah.
Like, these all look like they'll be worth discussion or whatever. And then when you go, you're kind of like, what did 2 weeks ago me think was good about this? And it comes on, and you're like, oh, I'm glad I scheduled this in.
Exactly.
Because you can't see every movie, but you try.
I'm doing my best. Yeah,
you try the most.
And I want to watch them with the crowds, right? That's the whole thing. Like, I know there's people that get to cover this, from further away and not actually have to be here, but like so much of the Fantasia experience is being here. And it's honestly unrivaled. But we kicked off with your first movie. Was LifeHack.
LifeHack.
Which was, what is the genre of this again?
It's called ScreenLife. So when you think of another ScreenLife movie was like Searching, and the famous, or maybe infamous, was Unfriended. It's all told from like the perspective of webcams, kind of like found footage through the lens of a computer. That's why it's ScreenLife, and you see the screens. And right out of the gate, I would say I went into this one very apprehensive. Shea was like, oh, again,
I think you asked me, I was like, I'm pretty sure this is the one they film in a computer or whatever. And you're like, what? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. Let's just go.
Well, because Shea was like off his 25th movie. He was like, yeah, I hit a bit of a peak yesterday. I was starting to realize how not every movie is like the best, but I mean, that's the beauty of it. So I was like, oh man, my first movie is going to be all from a webcam perspective type film, or again, ScreenLife. But I got to say, I think without giving anything away, I was thoroughly entertained. I forgot to blink. There's a joke in this where the character's like, you never blink, haha. And then I laughed a little bit. And then 30 minutes later, I was like, oh my gosh, the editing is so well done. I was so engaged with a ScreenLife movie, which I thought I would never say, because usually I find myself being like, how much time can I stare at a fake computer screen after staring at one all day? So, but you should talk a bit about it so I don't.
Yeah. Well, we'll try again. We want to talk about them enough, but keep spoilers pretty light, because chances are no one else has really been able to see these.
Not everything's wide release, so we just want to touch on the
we want to give them a chance. This was one of the better ones of the festival for sure that I've seen so far. I think similar to you, I'm apprehensive a little bit when I hear of the setup, and I'm like, well, it's interesting. But it's that same thing. It's like we stare at these all day, whether you're working and then doom scrolling and whatever. So it can feel kind of like that. But honestly, this one, and I think we'll kind of leave it at least vague about the setup. But it is also a heist movie, which is even more interesting. And I remember when I after the movie, and I was like, oh, that's right, I was intrigued by that setup, because I'm like, a heist movie in a ScreenLife movie. Okay, let's see. And it was really engaging.
Super engaging.
The cast was really good. And the story and setup was really good and worked. And it felt obviously there's parts that of the situation, I guess, that feel kind of absurd. The actual heist itself is it's a little, it's dramatic, right? It's a movie though. It's creative, but it definitely but I never it didn't derail it. It didn't feel oh my God, there's no way. The way they did it, practically, our way into these heist components. And I, again, trying to be vague about that, but it is still all in the computer, but they have cameras and things like that. So it's, but the way in felt organic. I didn't feel oh, this is just, we had to find a way to make this happen. So we just did this. It worked for what they were doing.
And I would say to that point, because immediately you and I would be like, well, how do they make an action-ish heist movie out of ScreenLife as a genre? That's got to be tough. But the thing that I feel with a lot of ScreenLife films is how do you care about these characters through a lens? And again, without giving anything away, I think they set it up pretty well. And there's a lot of moments in it that did remind me a lot of, again, when I said at the start of this video, where we are in 2025 from the last half decade now of being a little bit more terminally online, being a little bit more disconnected. And without hammering that too long, I would say it's really sweet the way they set some stuff up. They the way some of these characters connect in a video game, and I made a joke about Screen X a while ago, where it's like they should just play like was it like Temple Run on the sides for all the ADHD phone people, and this movie kind of does that to a degree where they're showing them playing a game while they're having a really heart-to-heart chat at a couple different moments.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a great way to keep people engaged and also feel kind of natural. I mean, how many people watch live streams or Twitches? So like it really did the best of the genre, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those movies too that they're talking about. They still want to find distribution for it. Yeah. And I think of all the ones I've seen, I would say this is definitely one of the top where I feel like this would do gangbusters on a streaming service. Like it would become a movie people would talk about tomorrow, like Billy Madison style, if it came out right now.
Yeah, it would definitely have a good bump. And again, like the cast, the characters, like the way they show that, I thought there was like some more kind of like backgroundy type moments that you get, like they're kind of characters of people that you like know or can at least like kind of plug in a little bit. And like I thought that part of it was really good, but also like again, the situation was believable. Like the way they unfold everything is super organic. Like we see not a heist at the very beginning, but like they're hacker kids or whatever.
They're script kiddies, which is what they
right. Yeah.
And I do want to touch on, because like the best part of some of this is when they do have like a Q&A with some of these movies. Some of them I wish had more Q&A or whatever. But I the producer of this one, I took a lot of notes, being my first film here. But I was like very smartly produced. They shot the entire movie in 12 days, which is really impressive when you see the scope of it and how they did it. Yeah. It feels like, I would jokingly say, or like maybe a disservice, like, oh, this is the Ocean's 11 of ScreenLife movies.
And also, you mentioned from that Q&A, I think it was Searching or whatever, like the crew of that was something like 3 times the size or something. Yeah. For this movie, and then like again, it's been a while since I've seen that, but I'm like, this was just a much more, to me, accessible, sort of kinetic, fun, movie that's a lot easier to recommend.
I feel like, not to sound like I'm hip with the youth, but I do feel like young folk watching
You're our
this.
senior Gen Z correspondent.
Yeah, as the youthful millennial / late blooming Gen Z here, but they did say it was a 5-person team that worked on all of it, like post production wise. They worked with like Meta, Facebook to really kind of get the lingo right, do the script research, so it didn't just sound like I'm hacking the mainframe. If you think of
just typing hack, like it's the Mission Impossible one. I don't know if you've seen that, but he just starts like googling things and he just.
Oh, I always think of like a Kung Fury where it's like Hacker Man, But they did a lot of smart producing. They said they had like a pre-production and pre-visualization of it. So once they shot it in those 12 days, it all really lined up. Like they went in with a very clear vision. And again, in 2025, it's so funny when we always talk about big blockbusters and Marvel movies where it's like, oh, there's 19,000 reshoots. The current
Doomsday movie is actively being shot without a completed script.
Exactly. So this is the opposite.
I'm sure that'll be great. Can't wait to cover that.
Based on what the producer was saying, though, but yeah, it was a team of only 5 people, and it was a tough 9 months of editing, but only a 12-day shoot. Tough, not bad, but just isn't like any creative, grueling, it's grueling to,
And they described it as like an animated movie, which, like, when you think about
the screens, also I want to touch on, again, it's not spoiler, but I think the graphics and the way that they, like you guys at home have seen movies, it's maybe not Facebook, it's like, face block, you know what I mean? And this movie does, like, they said Gmail, it's Qmail, but it looks like Gmail, like really smart art department, art direction, and again, the animation of that, I'm sure, like, they really put the work in, and I'm surprised that this wasn't, again, already picked up somewhere, because I really felt like I could have put this on Netflix and been like, oh, that was a fun, Wednesday night movie at home, And
honestly, it's too good for Netflix, but I say that as a critic and not someone involved in the movie or whatever, but it genuinely, it deserves like a good run. This is not the kind of movie of like, it's like a festival, like a niche thing. Like this is very accessible. And again, especially for that medium, like the concept of like, again, just like, you're basically in a computer screen the whole time effectively. But to literally, when it was like, I'm like, okay. And then it was like, it's also a heist movie. I'm like, what?
Well, especially,
and it works.
They elevate it too. Cause, I feel like, again, without giving it away, that like the heists that they do in this movie, I thought the heist, elements in that first part was going to be the whole thing. Right. And like any good, American dream crime drama, it's a crime drama effectively too. There's the rags to riches, and you really relate to the characters. And I love that story.
Yeah.
Everything from Scarface onwards, as long as there's an underdog that's scrappy and wants to make their buck.
Yeah.
So yeah, without
and they were likable too.
Super likable.
And the only minor things, like for me on the kind of negative side, was just like for the main character, there was like the subplot with him and his dad, which I felt like just really didn't add anything. Again, I think it's probably more of an attempt to make the character more
justify his
endearing
actions a little bit too, not having.
But even then, like I don't think, like honestly, you could pull that whole thing out to me and
still be relatable,
and it's even more like, again, and I think that's a testament to the actor.
Yes,
like it is, like I didn't need any of that to get on board with him and what was going on. And so, like, again, it was kind of thin for me, but it's not overwhelming either. Part of it being kind of undercooked is that it's also not that distracting. So if that's really the bigger gripe that I have with it, then I think, again, testament to the kind of movie it is.
This movie, and this is how I'll segue into our next one, I would say the pacing is incredibly strong. And, when you don't linger on something, you don't think about the flaws in it. And this movie is, again, a great example of that. Because the next movie we're going to talk about, I found the pacing is probably the only thing that really derailed it for me, because it was very interesting. But it's a huge whiplash to go from the very kinetic, frenetic, high octane screen movie where I said I forgot to blink for like 30 minutes to go to a movie where I found myself blinking a lot. We're going to talk, I guess, about OBEX.
OBEX, this was again like back to back, so we hopped from that theater. I went across the road to the other one, and the thing for OBEX, I was still positive on it, but only slightly. And I think my issue with this really is that there's a movie in there that I adore.
Yeah,
like
I 100%
love.
agree with that.
And again, the listing on Letterboxd says it is only 91 minutes. I don't believe that. I didn't time it. It absolutely does not feel like 91 minutes. And again, like it was that, like, again, is the single kind of issue for me with that. But the pacing also sort of relates to some other stuff, but like just on a kind of a high level, it's also black and white, right?
Yeah. We're going to be covering two movies that were almost completely black and white, and I thought that's funny because we covered two foreign films, two black and white films, two short films that are very similar and substance oriented, and then the first movie is the only most unique, probably, ScreenLife, and then a lot of similar themes.
It's self-contained, and like again, there's a lot of themes going on, and even for you, like you were more on the negative camp, I think.
Yeah.
But it's one we've talked about the most easily since we've watched it.
It lingered a lot.
It lingers, and again, that's what I'd like kind of bummed me out, was that like again there was something in there that I adore, and I feel like this is the kind of thing that this movie could, I think, also be a lot better with a bit of reshoots to extend the back half and cut a lot of that first half.
Yeah.
And to kind of give a general sense of what this movie is, this guy's like, it's an interesting kind of era because it feels COVID adjacent in the modern world, but it takes place in like the 80s or whatever it was.
1987.
Right. So, and this guy, like, and it's not clear, like, out of the gate, like, this dude has VHS tapes and, like, analog TVs, but again, you're kind of, like, it doesn't say that outright, I don't think, but then when he's getting news coverage and things like that, but he's a recluse. He lives at home, he gets his groceries delivered, and he's got his dog, Sandy, the star of the show.
Sandy stole the show. I'm not like a huge dog person, but whenever the movie would drag, the dog came on screen, and, like,
the crowd is eating it up. And again, dog guy, I don't need to go over that again. Absolutely worked for me. And then there's like a bunch of other things, but then kind of the back half, the first half is like basically this guy and Sandy in their house. And again, for a lot of it, like, again, there was still stuff there that worked, that was interesting. A lot of that, though, did not add enough to me to justify it. But the back half, all I'll say, it's video game related. He gets a video game. There's some stuff that happens. And the back half, like what I wrote in my review, was like any movie that has a dog and reminds me of Oblivion and Skyrim, I'm in. And so that's all kind of I'll give on that. But that second half is to me where that could have been much more fun and again, this is probably budgeting and all of that other stuff. Like, this is definitely an indie movie. But like, I would have really liked to see that part blown out a little more. And then, yeah, you cut a lot of that first bit because the lead, who I believe was the director,
I think so. He also,
yeah, like
the director also did some of the music for it. Again, like it does have a very to kind of glaze my thoughts on this is I left a lot more disappointed because it set up so much great stuff in there, and I think this could have been like an indie gem for my experience, and I really liked a lot of the visuals. I think I was kind of joking around, like the apartment of this recluse is a great set piece, and I felt like, you know, they used it to the maximum amount basically. But then again, like what Shea saying,
overtapped it a little.
They overtapped it. And I'm only saying this in this lens where like I went to film school. I made a short film a year or two ago that I was financing it, and I put all this effort in and paid everybody, like as you do. And when it came down to it, I scheduled like a 10-hour day to which I spent 7 hours in the house. That was like 2 pages of like a 6-page script. And then the most important stuff, that was outside on a beach, literally chasing the sunlight. I ran into a lake to get my last shot holding the camera. Like very, again, indie filmmaking. So like I've been there, and I think I really love the attempt at what he was going for.
Yep.
But yeah, I definitely feel like they were cooking in the house. Like I loved a lot of what was in the house. I almost thought it would have been just in the house. It's more about the paranoia the character was feeling. And again, I liked a lot of that vibe, and I was almost the opposite of you when they go on this high fantasy adventure, especially because I think it was a little bit long. Like I said, once I realized they were committing to switching gears, almost any time there was a cut, I was like, are they ending it here? And then it would go on and on. I could have done a version of this that was more like a paranoia in the house, episode of that, or the other way, like what you said, but to have both. And again, some of the visuals, like I'm really underselling it, but like, there's a deity, there's some like very retro scanline television stuff that they do. His job, which I don't think spoils anything talking about
no.
He's like a computer artist, like the closest thing to a 1987 graphic designer, where he gets people mailing him cash with photos of family members, and he clicks into his computer to make like asterisks and lines and symbols to make like a pretty photoreal printout of them.
Recreate their picture in the digital form.
And it's like, it's very cute, it's very charming, it's very like it has a great visual language. But yeah, I think like I really thought this was a 3-hour movie, and I'm like, if they could have 45 minutes, I would have loved that. And then when we saw it was a 90-minute movie, I was like, if this was an hour Black Mirror episode, it would be one of the better ones maybe. But I wish I had more money and a tighter edit, because I think this was a really fun movie. Just the fun sucked out of the room for me the longer it went, without any, even scenes they could have cut 10-15 seconds per interaction. Almost, it felt like they didn't leave anything on the cutting room floor. It's what I felt, because it was a lot of scenes where it's like, somebody realizing something's wrong after we've been seeing it going wrong for like 10-15 seconds of screen time, and it's like the urgency gets lost and you let that off the gas. So the pacing is the issue for
pacing,
me.
Like I said, either our cut was not 91 minutes, or like the pacing was like, again, it was really off. And again, like I don't know what the distribution like is for this movie, but like it would genuinely, like, I hope someone does pick it up and gives them more money to maybe rework some of that, because I genuinely, like I said, there's a movie in there that I love, I love. And like the reason why like I felt more strong about my vision is that back half of the movie is so essential to what I think is like the story and the theme, and which was much more hopeful than kind of the dread, paranoia, like darker version of that, and which I liked. And I think like for me, that was kind of the angle in for that I really like adored. And again, like just from a creative perspective, that would help pacing if you have more of the movie occur in that back half where like it's a little more easy. I'm trying to be vague. It's a little more easy to hold attention without just like this guy kind of existing. And like there's like even again the scene playing with the dog. I love that. He's running around chasing him, playing with the dog. I love that. I'm pretty sure that went on for like 45 seconds, a minute, just of that one of them running in a circle about it. And it's like it's so easy to, especially again with a great performance by him, who again, I looked it up, is the director, is the star, plays one of the other characters that he doesn't need to show his face for. But like it's so easy to set up with him and with that dog. Like I don't need a whole lot to really get into that relationship. And then that's obviously like the heart and soul of it, and it's kind of the propulsion to the back half as well. And so yeah, like I feel like that's so much easier to do. And then, like I said, play around with that more and kind of give more of those beats to that back half. But like genuinely, the end of this had me like welled up a bit. And it was, again, this is purely on the dog guy thing. Like I think it just worked wonders. But it also got Adriana, who's a certified cat mom right now, but has had a dog, a family dog, and that she said it was like immediately reminded her of that too. But like genuinely, the ending of this movie, like literal ending of this movie, was perfect. I thought it was so perfect. And like again, that's what kind of bummed me out the most, was that like there is something in there that I can adore. It's just like it needs to find more of it. But
I think on that note, he's talking about like the ending shots and stuff without again giving much away. I think part of the reason why I appreciated the amount I did without loving it the way I wanted to was if you were to send like a demo reel of this movie, like if you essentially turn this into a 1 minute highlight reel of some of the visual pieces, some of the effects work, like it's purposefully a little bit janky, I felt, but some effects are really impactful.
Yeah.
Some are funny, and like it has a really good, like almost like Adult Swim, late night, surreal vibe. But I think like even just some of the art design and production design, the way they make some of the graphics for this retro computer stuff, all the way down to like I was saying, there is a character later in the movie, and I feel like it's almost like I mean this in a loving way, but it's a really cool abstract hipster tattoo, I feel almost, of a character that there's a character in this. I don't want to spoil it. I mean, I don't think it is, but yeah, there's a character that basically has like an old CRT TV for a head.
Yeah.
And he's walking through the woods like it's like Lord of the Rings with a little electronic man.
Yeah.
Again, very like, again, you screenshot that abstract vision of old technology and nature with this recluse. Like there's so much in here that I think really does work. I hope they can find a way to make it more digestible, because I think like people who really love movies and love this visual language that they developed for this would eat it up. But no matter how good all that is, when you're almost counting down to the next moment or waiting for the immediacy of a scene to catch up with itself, you're kind of like. But I loved it visually. I wish it.
Well, and even
went
from
faster.
like the beats were all there too. They were just, again, the space between them was tough. But like even that character you're talking about, like which we haven't talked about, but that character's arc and what happens with them near towards the end of the movie, like really did like hit. And I was like kind of like moved by it.
The themes they explore with that too, and
like,
some of the jokes even, which are relevant to the themes. They cooked so many great things up in this movie, and again, I think that's why we talked about it so much.
Yeah, it is. That's, I think, the brilliance of it is that, like, again, it's easily one of the most kind of stuck in our heads, and there is so much there. It's just finding more of it. I feel like
we talked about ScreenLife, and I was like, oh yeah, really good. And then, like, oh, these are some notes I took. And I was very like enjoyed, but when it came to this movie, I think I left like dragging my feet, confused. And it took like a little while for me to kind of like, even now talking about this. And again, it goes with that, the strength of the vision that was there is, even if not like well paced, it has a lot of great raw material. And I would hope that what we saw, maybe it was an early cut and it's here at Fantasia for maybe just seeing reactions. I really wish there was a Q&A for this one. I really wish we got to hear something about this, because it did feel like one guy's vision. Partially maybe why I was even saying about the editing. It does remind me of all the friends I have who make their thing, and especially when he did so much great stuff. Yeah, everything felt like it got left in, and that's the part where you gotta, was it kill your babies, kill your darlings, and just tighten it up, because I do think this could have been like a movie that I heralded as like a fun, trippy experience. Oh yeah,
like again, genuinely, there is like one of my favorite films of the year is
inside that in a different edit. Even without reshooting, as you were saying, I really feel like trimming that to a different version with all the same material, it could still land for like 9 out of 10 people the way that we were hoping. But yeah, OBEX. Really recommend if people have the opportunity to check it out, go in with a bit more patience than we did after 30 movies for you.
Well, but that was one of the other things I felt kind of like, because that's been one of my worries. Like, I'm seeing so much, like, is that just kind of also to a degree maybe like stunting some of the impacts of stuff? But like,
but that was my second movie, and I still came out more
pacing,
harsh about
and
the
even
pacing.
Adriana was kind of in there with us on
and
that.
She loves slice of life stuff too. Like she's so when there is a lot of those elements that I felt like me personally was like get to the cerebral horror. Get
Cat
to the
dad
VHS.
over here, by the way. So take all that with a grain of salt too.
But So
but then we went from one of the more memorable ones. That was the end of your day one.
Day one.
Then day two, we kicked off. We had 4 movies, but we kicked off with your favorite.
Yes.
So far of the whole thing, I think. Right?
I think the whole thing. I think bold claim. I don't want to overgas it. In fact, I almost don't want to even talk much about this one because I feel like I want to have a great discussion about it.
This will be
widely
one
released.
I expect we'll cover again.
I feel like what we're getting at is the movie It Ends. The easy joke to make is it's not a follow-up to It Follows. It is. My coworkers hit me with that when I was like, I'm going to Montreal. I really want to see this movie called It Ends.
Okay, let me ask you first, because this was one you had flagged to me earlier.
Yeah.
I never heard about this movie. I just, again, was going through all the lists to make my schedule, and I'm like, I plan on seeing it, but like you had heard about this. Where did that, like, how did this get on your radar?
Honestly, social media and just Instagram. Like even me being here now, having this discussion, we talked about the atmosphere of Fantasia. I think what I'm loving about the digital space that we're allowed to occupy is. I would have never heard about it if it wasn't for like I wish I could look them up, but it's like the For You page was like, if you love liminal space horror movies, I think he said like a Gen Z liminal space horror movie, and I saw the poster and what he was talking about, and I thought it was a screen grab from Until Dawn, because there's an old Jeep in that and a cast of young Gen Z staring out into the woods. So I looked into it, and I didn't look too far into it because I was like, oh, it actually seems really good. And originally I was like, hey, is that playing there? And long story long, this was the one I came to see basically. If I could only see a handful of ones, this was on my list. But I've just general thoughts. I know you could talk more on it, but
I can give the setup, I guess, a little bit on this one, because it's like it's not like a secret. Again, it's right away at the beginning, if you need the setup,
it's in the bio and description.
So it's very much a these people are driving on the road, and the road never ends. It just keeps going. Like, I feel like we've been here before, and I missed it. The turn was supposed to be up ahead, and it just keeps going and keeps going. And it's 4 of them in the car.
4 of them there, and they're all very different for the most part. I like the characterizations of it. You've got Tyler. He's kind of the responsible friend. He's the one that has the car. He doesn't see his friends much because they've all kind of moved away to school or done. He's a little bit more of a homebody, more of a small town guy.
Yeah.
And then you've got his friend James, who I really resonated with. He's the friend that went to school. He's moving out. He's getting a real adult job. And then it's Day and Fish are the 2 characters in the backseat. Great actors, all of them. But these 2 characters are like the more stunted, like kind of like the Gen Z. Like, they don't take really anything seriously. And at the start of the movie, you can see their friendship and you can see where the cracks, the tears are. But when you're on a never-ending road trip, that's when things rip. And especially, I think what my big takeaway from this essentially never-ending road trip horror movie was what was not said, what you could understand from lived experience. And, as kids who both grew up in a small town and went to radically far away different cities, there's scenes in this movie where characters have to essentially make their own closure. And it's almost closure that's happened off screen. And it's really easy to relate to if you've ever, moved out of your hometown to go to school. And I think it captures a time print for a lot of younger folk. And again, they call it a Gen Z horror, but I think it really applies to almost anybody. Like the way they discuss memes, the way they start off with a conversation and they're like, was it like 50 eagles versus a guy with a gun? And then they're talking about that for like 5-10 minutes of screen time.
Two of them can attack you, and 2 of them will defend you or whatever.
It's questions like that make a road trip, that make a friendship. And I thought it was like, again, a worse movie. You'd be sitting there being like, this is really cringe. But the characters are all really realized. It
doesn't have the energy of like a 6-year-old man just wrote like kids talking about memes.
Well, like I said, like to be hip with the youth today.
Yeah.
But absolutely loved it. I think there was at least 2 moments in it where I was like very emotional, cathartically almost. It captures a lot of like I'd say themes of not only growing up but growing apart, but like trying to move forward because that's what you're supposed to do. And the way that I joke about the Family Guy thing, like, I love when they work the title into movies, and they go like, "Oh, hey, thanks for saving the day, Superman 4: A Quest for Peace." You know, when it's not a direct title drop, but when you kind of, you know,
I honestly, and I'm, it's,
we can
I
cut
feel
this.
no, I feel good talking about this. I mean, like the title of it is the worst, the whole worst part.
I almost cried when I realized what it meant.
Well, but okay. We might cut this because depending on where this discussion goes. But my biggest problem with the movie, I basically agree with everything you said. I think especially the characters and the like kind of exploration of those archetypes of people was really interesting. And again, when this gets us full release, we will cover it again because there's a lot to kind of dig in on there.
Full episode for sure.
But they won't change it, obviously. But I was stunted by the title. Like the title literally kind of took all of these kind of beats away from me that, like you said, you got so swept up in it. And I was also like, this was the earliest I was tired and cranky. I've been on a nocturnal schedule watching all these movies like late into the days and stuff. And this one was earlier in the day. It was at 11:40 or something. But early by my schedule that I've been living off of. And so like maybe that was part of it too. But like the title itself was like completely like dulled the kind of impact at the end.
Yeah.
And so like the reason why I feel like I don't want to cut this, but like the reason why I feel it's okay to talk about is that it's obvious, it's the title of the movie, and like again, like what they do with it, like it doesn't impact like ultimately, like there's still a whole, you know, it's just really the plot point. But I was going in knowing that this was a plot point, even though I didn't read it. It's the title of the movie, and it's also the title of the movie that is shown earlier in the movie. Like it shows you the title of the movie, even. So it's like,
I do think,
like, come on, man.
I do think the title is the cruelest joke the movie plays, and for me, it lands.
If it did, and like maybe that was the impact, I guess, but like there was an audible groan in the crowd. Yeah. I was like, are you guys kidding me?
To be fair, I groaned, and it reminded me of the same groan I heard in John Wick 4 when he gets kicked down the stairs again. It was that real loss of hopelessness. And so, again, when we talk about movies that we find are mid...
And to be fair to you, too, it worked. Like, again, completely. It got like that audible groan. Maybe it was just me.
You're just 500 like, IQ. You're like, obviously.
Well, I was kind of, I don't know. Anyway, it's not a huge thing. Like, again, for more, like, again, everybody else, it did. Like, it was one of my favorite crowd reactions of the whole festival. But yeah, no, it's definitely, we'll talk more about this one for sure at a later date because it was definitely one of the better ones.
To like sell kind of some of the premise, because we did skip over a little bit of some of how I would recommend it to some people, I guess. Other properties that have similar setups or vibes, I guess. There is a TV show called From. They shoot that in Nova Scotia in Canada. And the idea is, you know, you go on a road trip and you see a tree in the road. You're now stuck in an infinite loop and you can't leave this small town. It draws a little bit of that feeling where there's monsters at night that come out. And I'm not saying anything about this movie, but...
well, honestly, I was just looking this up, too, because I think it is at least listed as horror, and I think that's not a good...
It definitely feels more like a surreal drama. Like, it's super real, and it's very abstract.
Because it's not a thriller. It's not... There's horror-ish components at the very beginning. Like they play that up well and effectively. But like, it doesn't fit into those genres neatly, and I think like drama seems more just kind of like apropos in terms of trying to set an expectation for yourself because it's really not like I mean it's surreal in sense of the situation, but like the visual language, the kind of overall what's happening isn't. And and
to that too, it's like it's almost meta at a certain point. They're very smart characters. In fact, it almost ruined other movies for me that day because you know they end up in this situation where they're like on an endless road trip, and immediately they're like, you know, is this hell or in limbo? They ask all the questions the audience is asking. And I thought that was really smart, and then they also don't. That's not like a throwaway gag. Like that plays into it later, and it's a very smart movie with very smart characters. And again, like media similar to that, like I said, the From Show. And if you like creepypastas or horror stories, there's one called the Left Right Game. Essentially, you take the first left and the first right, and you can do this in any town, anywhere in the world, and you'll essentially end up on a road trip beyond space and time. So,
Right.
I as a fan of both of those things, this is very similar setups as far as those like concepts. You know what I mean? But I also it doesn't help. I did like an 8,000 kilometer month. Like your movie month is my driving month. I did the East Coast and back. I've driven to Montreal 2 or 3 times. Like I've basically done almost 8,000 kilometers in the span of like a month. So seeing a road trip movie where characters are going for literally like I wanted to do the math on it, but the United States is like 3,000 miles coast to coast or something, and you know they hit like 1,000,000 miles at a certain point, and it's like, my God, like my ass hurt thinking of these characters. You know?
Oh yeah, that's what. Yeah, I will. We'll save more of that because I have bits and jokes for that, but we need to be able to do spoilers for that one. Yeah. I will say on overall, like I came in. I think I gave this one like a like rating for our scale, and for me, I also kind of have problems with it in terms of kind of the themes a little bit. Again, the characters I really like, but on a kind of complaint level, there's like kind of the overall thing, which we can't get into at all, or it gives too much away. But we'll definitely talk about that when the movie comes out, because I do want to see it again with fresh eyes as well before that. But it definitely is it's a conversation movie.
I have huge confidence this gets picked up by like Shudder or something. Like it's gonna get out there.
If it isn't already, like
it's I gave it like a 5. I loved it. I related to all the characters, especially the ones I deemed to be the main ones. And yeah, I couldn't recommend it enough. If you ever see it pop up on streaming, or if you have the opportunity,
stop talking about streaming. Don't watch it on streaming. Get this movie in theaters and go watch it there with your friends. All right. No more streaming. This is nonsense, okay?
I just wanted the creator's vision to be seen. Okay?
Exactly. But in the format in which it was best experienced.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's a simple thing. The crowd reactions.
That really made it, especially for me.
I enjoyed that moment more because of everyone's reaction, even if the impact didn't hit. It still enhances the experience.
I felt kind of alone in my experience because I knew how you were feeling about it, and especially like...
I wasn't being like... overtly negative or anything during it.
We could cut this part too, but like
we're not cutting any of it. It's
coming to Montreal every time I come, I'm like I have a crazy job, I work all the time. But Shea's like, you really gotta slow down, man, and enjoy your time and take time for yourself,
live a little.
And that's one of these characters in this movie. That's kind of his thing, where he's just moving forward constantly. So that character specifically, for me, it was just like I felt kind of alone in the sense where I was so gut punched, and when the whole audience went, at many different points in this, I was like, oh, good. Everyone also feels like they're in a rat race, and that character representing that theme is being...
and again, I think effective where, like, I didn't necessarily have to, like, relate to the character to understand it. Like, it still worked on that level for me, too. So it's definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. One that neither of us would recommend is the next movie we saw, which is called Haunted Mountains, The Yellow Taboo. Not the longest title of the festival for me so far, but the longest for you.
Can you remember the longest title?
It was I fell in love with a Z grade director in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Nailed that.
Yeah.
And I love that movie. It was fun. But this one was Ty's favorite. He's only seen a few movies. Ty's like, oh, this was one of my favorites, which gave me confidence. I'm showing Brandon the letterbox curve of this movie. Not great. And I was like, oh, okay. Like Ty said he liked it. Let's go. And I did not like it. It had some like okay visual stuff. It's like Groundhog Day-esque in a horror loop thing. My favorite part about it was that it's an anti-hiking movie, which I was all for, obviously. And
we left, and Shea was like, I'm glad more people are going to leave knowing hiking is dumb.
I literally wrote, love the anti-hiking message in this one for my letterbox review. So, it was just some kind of like, again, Ty was really like saying a lot about the visuals, and I feel like, yes, some of them were cool and the effects were different for sure than what you kind of normally see. Sure. But also a lot of it just looked like very weird, like what do they call it in Disney? Like the Dome or whatever? Or
for the Mandalorian, they shoot on like it's like a AR and augmented reality wall called like the Void or something. We have one in Toronto.
Okay, well, whatever it is, I hate it.
It felt like they're in front of a big backlot with a green screen or something.
Right, but but it wasn't like a green screen, but it had like this artificialness at some points.
It had a lot of gloss, especially compared to watching It Ends, where that felt so much more organic and like visually again more rugged. This movie felt like it was like Hollywood gloss, but again a Taiwanese story. And they're hiking in the mountains of Taiwan, I believe it said. So I totally agree with you, because there's so much of it that I think really looked good again, like in instances, but there'd be a lot of scenes where it reminded me almost a little bit of like Mama, if you've seen that, where these kids have this demon mom that is like following them, and Mama ends with like a cliffside argument with a ghost to let go. And there's scenes in this that are reminiscent of that, and again, but it looks like 2011, cliffside. Talk to your demons.
The effects were better on like the specific kind of like spirits and creatures and whatever. And
good set design and production for that. Like the colors really
good
pop.
Locations,
good locations
stuff. I really also have to hamper the lead performance. It was like the most flat, and it was like I didn't care. You were harping on me last night. We were talking about like Shea hates romance in movies and everything, and that's not entirely untrue. Like I love specific. I was thinking about this because you kind of got into my head about that. I'm like, do I hate them too much? And I was thinking, but like one of my favorite movies ever is Her. And so it's not like I'm against the concept of romance movies. What I hate is when they're shoehorned into movies to be like, because like to make the main character relatable, because who hasn't been in love?
Your favorite on-screen depiction of love is a guy with a robot girlfriend.
I would fall in love with an AI if it sounded like Scarlett Johansson, which is why she didn't license her likeness out to whoever or whatever.
That's why I mean, thought like a robot that doesn't talk back to you.
But that's an amazing romance movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. But
that's such a dark spin on that.
I know.
But anyway. The thing about it for me was that like I just didn't care at all about that relationship, and that's really sort of the foundation. And I actually kind of liked it's messy and all of this towards the end, especially like when Brandon was talking about it, and I don't want to out him on the podcast, but it was like he watched a different movie. Him and me and Ty, like I was taking Ty's side, and when we were arguing about the movie, and I was like, no, that was anyway. But it is confusing. Like there's things that happen that I'm like, well, like it is a mess. But particularly the very end, which I won't talk about, but like that was a choice that from a narrative level, I was like, oh, like that had the power to really punch. And I didn't care at all. And I like to kind of my disappointment, because like, again, I was like, it's a unique angle, or at least as far as I've never seen something like with that such a specific sacrifice like that. And like, again, I thought had so much potential, but just in this movie with these performances just felt completely flat.
Yeah, well, without spoiling it, it's impossible for me to rag on it to the full extent I would love to.
Yeah.
But on that note, which is funny, I know there's obviously a bit of a language barrier, but being like a Groundhog Day, Live, Die, Repeat formula, and this is not a spoiler to the movie, but just like if you've seen a movie that has that element, that like Happy Death Day, at some point the character who keeps waking up is going to have to speed run explain what happens to the person or people that don't believe them. They think they're crazy. They do that once, but then essentially their memories reset every time. And there's eventually a point where he has the craziest thing. He basically has to literally run up a hill to a cliffside and have a big dramatic finale moment that if my dearest, sweetest loved one woke up and told me this, I would be like, you're unwell. And so there's these logical gaps here where it's like they take the time to do this stuff.
They don't do the premise effectively.
It's not effective, and again, that's a nitpick because, like I said, I think I missed
bigger problems.
I think I misinterpreted at least two of his many lives that were pivotal to the scene. And again, I don't know if that's me just maybe being less alert, or maybe I was reading too many subtitles. But there's a moment
it is a thing
where I was like, if he wakes up one more time in the same loop, I'm gonna like go to the bathroom. Like I was starting to really check out. So I think that was a part where, by the time the action's happening after they do the reset again, and then he makes a big confession or says a thing, I'm just kind of like, which character was he talking about? And like, and when the end, you're like, no, dude, you missed it. It wasn't XYZ character. It was YZP character. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know the alphabet. But yeah. So, again, it's funny visually speaking. I think like talking about horror movies a lot. It was kind of neat. But also, and we'll get to this with a later review. And again, maybe it's cultural, but the protagonist in that movie is not great at making certain choices, or he's not good at taking action. When a lot of the screen time, and especially again near the finale, the music's doing a lot of heavy lifting, where it's somebody staring longingly into the camera like this. I remember thinking, I was like, if you cut the sound of this, which I know is most movies, it would just be like very awkward and gross. Yeah. So I didn't love it, and I wish there's better characters. Again, coming out of it ends super smart characters, super punchy. There's really nothing wasted, and it's a very streamlined, well executed thing. Everything that kind of followed that, especially this one, I was a little bit more like, I wish they were as smart as the characters in the last movie in a horror situation where they have to, when the guy would have woken up and been like, what do I have to do to move on from this? Instead, he's just like living in denial. Oh, last bit on this. There's a meme that I keep referring to where it's like, the marquee of the movie theater says, now playing a movie where the monster represents grief. And then the guy's walking out with his girlfriend or his buddy, and he's like, hey, did you notice how that monster was actually representation of that person's grief? And I go, oh, that's, and this movie's that, like, it hits a lot of movies, but I'm like,
I believe, shout out to Brandon who commented on one of my reviews. Like, I swear to God, if I have to watch one more movie about grief, which to take a shot at Kevin, the movies he watches, I would watch grief-only movies for the rest of my life than the things that guy enjoys. I love you, Kevin, but good Lord Almighty. The next one we saw, so our third movie of the day, was I'm just calling it Positions. Like, I think that's what they did call it, but it's Positions, but there's a $sign in front of the P. So
it's like a crypto thing,
Yeah. Which is kind of sort of like the setup is kind of this like. Guy, it's supposed to be like I'm calling the genre like anxiety or like stress, panic attack genre,
like Good Time or
Uncut Gems was my favorite of those ones where it's like, oh my God, you just become a wall of like
very similar. Was it Benny Safdie? That's the director of those, right? And he is so good at making these scenes and characters that are like constantly making things worse than themselves. Adriana puts. Her thing was like, I hate watching movies where people make like horrible choices so much that I feel so. I'm like, well, that's the point. Like, I left depressed and sweaty, and I was gonna I should sober up. Like, I smell myself.
He committed to be getting sober for about 10 minutes between the walk from there to the restaurant.
The finest bottle of Prosecco had my eye. I need to take the edge off. That movie put the edge on. The escapism.
Well, so this is where we kind of differ a little bit on this one. So I was still kind of like, I ultimately fell mid on this one. It's also like a comedy, which I thought completely sort of undercut that part of it. Because there are some like uncomfortable laughs in something like the Uncut Gems is one I will kind of refer to most often, just because that's my favorite of those that I just really hit me when I watched that. Wigged me right out. But there's like intentional, like just kind of general comedy bits kind of sprinkled throughout this. And in a movie like that, you cannot give me those because it's a tension release. And so even when I felt a little anxious at certain moments, I kept feeling a release of tension. Where something like Uncut Gems, I can spoil Uncut Gems at this point, I did not, like, the movie just kind of tightened its grip on how freaking tweak. I was like, oh my God, until he gets shot, and I'm like, okay, it's over. Which is like horribly like
you don't even care what happened. You're just like, thank God.
But that was the only release. So the movie for an hour and a half has me just constantly getting more like and then it gives me that release. And this movie sprinkled it throughout. And again, for me, I could see why. And they did build a bit, and had they accumulated, would have tweaked me out. But some of them also, like, I feel like they did certain things with it that didn't make it feel as impactful. Like, one of the, like, what we can say is that the guy's like a crypto gambling addict, effectively.
Yeah.
He's not, and he does not have money. And so he basically gambles the family kind of life savings that they've got on crypto and the highs and lows of crypto. And so there's a moment, though, like earlier on, it's not a spoiler or anything, because it's right near the beginning, and like he sells on a down period. And it's like, that was the part that tweaked me out the most, because I'm like, man, the movie doesn't give you any urgency. Like, it's not like he needs that low amount of money right now.
Yeah.
And he just kind of does it. And then the movie moves on. And it's like, that's the kind of moment where I felt like they could have dialed it more, but they didn't. And then, but again, the constant kind of laugh reliefs. So this was, to me, why I kind of became mid. It was like, I saw, like, as a comedy, it was kind of funny. As this tension movie, it was kind of good. Like, it was effective. But ultimately, it occupied neither space well enough that I was, like, satisfied with it.
Yeah.
And for me, it just kind of was like, pick a lane. And, like, having this character be, like, a goofy, like, again, that comedic component, I felt just kind of undercut a lot of those tension moments for me. So then when it kind of ended, I just was like, okay.
I do see what you mean, because I did find the tension ratcheting was really effective. And I would even say, when you said they sprinkled in some of the humor,
it could have had something to do also with the 4 espressos that we had between that.
I dosed Shea with a lot of caffeine before.
And yourself.
And myself. I mean,
that's not going to help your anxiety.
But I think, yeah, like, I think it does both pretty well. You know, it's hard for
like,
it to...
There was laughs, yeah.
You know, like, they're both done fairly well. This movie, if anything, like, off the top, I would say a lot of the reviews I was seeing was like, oh, you know, Brandon Daly does it again. I really want to see what else he's done, because I think I really appreciate it.
It did make me curious. Yeah.
You know, like, I've known a lot of guys who remind me of the lead character, and, you know, even there's people in my own life that I could, like, really pick out in this movie. I kind of, like, jokingly would have said it's like Napoleon Dynamite-esque in that first third, where it's this, like, rural small town with, like, just kind of like off-color people, off-color relationships, and it's fun, it's cute, and you know, before the characters descent into madness, where that late second act and final third of the movie are a lot more of that tight Benny Safdie, you know, Uncut Gems style of anxiety trip, where it's like, how much worse could this get? And as soon as they telegraph how it could get worse, you're already like, oh my god, no. So for me, if you parse it out, if you let the first third of the movie, you know, not taint the rest of it, because, like, it is really funny and silly in the start, but when, yeah, like what you said, when there's some stuff happening later, you remember what happened in the start, like, oh, this is the same character, same world. It's kind of like, it doesn't take itself seriously, but the ending and, like, the way the movie goes, it is very serious. And, like, I left on a bit of a bummer note, like, the lead actor came up at the start of this, and he seemed like a really lovely guy, and he said, like, you know, it's a crazy, turbulent movie, but, you know, it's an optimistic movie that things do get better. And by the end of the movie, even though it fluctuates, it's a roller coaster. I definitely left being like,
yeah, they go for a hopeful moment or whatever. Like, they try at the very end, like before they cut. But yeah, like, it's like, I guess
it didn't land for me, because I felt like so much more was effective when it was on the downward spiral, that when they try to pull up from the nosedive towards the end, it didn't balance the scales for me. But I do think, like, the allegories for the addiction and the literal addictions you see in this movie, the main character who he's not really into sex, he's not into drinking or drugs. He's never had a beer, still never had a beer by the end of the movie.
Yeah, spoiler.
Mild spoiler, but you know, it's
warm spoiler.
Cool, yeah. So it's it's a very good movie. And again, like, I think my immediate thought leaving was like, what are my vices? You're a friend of the podcast, your girlfriend Ashley was bringing up how she, like, really limits, like, drinking caffeine and sugar. And I was like, that's so adult of you. Here I am being like, oh, it's my week off work. I'm at the film fest. I'll have some drinks, you know, whatever. But this movie definitely hit me at this point in my life where I'm like, I should really dial in my lifestyle because this guy.
But didn't hit you in enough not to get us a bottle of Prosecco.
I'm on vacation, but yeah. No, so so long story long, I think this movie maybe worked more for me, mostly because I did relate a lot to this, and yeah, like I feel like I would show this to a lot of people. I'd recommend this to a lot of people.
Yeah.
If it was wide released, I think this is a movie that I could show to my dad, or because my dad's really into crypto, you know, and I feel like it would, you know, like not be, it would be good. It'd be enjoyable. It's a very
I
enjoyable.
think like again, this is one of the things about like doing this and like covering movies and stuff like that is not to say like, you know, the movie, this is how the movie affected me, that's how the movie affected you. That's not to like, we had different experiences with the same thing, and that's kind of the beauty of movies too, is that like you could be somewhere in between the two of us, you could be way over further on it than me, further than him, and you could commit to becoming a nun after this movie, a crypto free nun, you know, afterwards or something like that. But yeah, I think there was just beats of this, like again, nuggets. Like again, I feel like just as a straight comedy, this guy has a bit more chops for that as a director. Like again, this, I feel like honestly a lot of it comes down to the script. Because again, I felt like those kinds of things were in tension, which, you know, as a release of tension. And also there's kind of like big emotional beats, and I don't want to give one of them away. But like there's a critical moment for the character in the middle of the movie that we just kind of like, again, when I say like they don't really make that moment feel impactful, I really felt kind of like the same feeling about that kind of critical moment.
Yeah.
And then we're just on to the next kind of loop. And
that's addiction, man. You don't really process when you're in that high.
But also like, again, like similar beats is like as the real descent, you know, kind of happens where things really are going off the rails and more bad decisions pile up. I felt like, again, from the script level, some of them did not quite work for me. Like one of the ones like near the very end before they're driving there, they make a call to do something. Like, and it was
immediately everyone's like, oh, this is
well, like, and again, like, which is fine. Like these movies have a thing where you go, no, why did you? But like the movie itself didn't, like, it just felt like, oh, I need to make a dumb mistake.
Yeah.
And do it. And so like for me, it just didn't quite work on that level. But again, like you, other people, like clearly it's not a universal thing. So it's definitely a movie. Like I can recommend it enough. Like it's worth the chance to see, because even if it doesn't work, like it didn't for me, it was still funny. There were still moments of that tension. And again, like
tons of crowd laughs at this one.
Yeah. There was enough, like the comedic bits again were funny. Like I genuinely, it was just like, I was like, okay, then commit to that part. I would have liked to have seen that kind of boil out as a straight comedy almost.
Well, even the way the crowd would sigh at a lot of moments too. Like again, the Montreal Fantasia Film Fest atmosphere for this was pretty premium, and and again, like you said, the varying opinions on it. It's like I think, you know, the bad choices to some feel really out of pocket, but to others it would be like, no, that's real. That makes sense if you're, you know, in that world, or you're strung out or whatever. And I don't know. Like I found that myself in our next movie, smelling my pits, because I was like, I think I stress sweat through that movie. I was like, you know, if you believe big deodorant commercials, the stress sweat smells worse than regular. And for the first time in like years, I'm like, I sweat through my own deodorant in that movie. I was stressed out in a movie theater. And I
popped up on 4 espresso shots.
Yeah, 4 espresso shots, 13 Diet Cokes, and I was like, hey man, I feel like I gotta shower when we get back. I'm stressed out. I get
to hose Brandon off. But that wasn't the end of our day. 3 movies in, one more to go.
One more to go.
And was this next one your low of it so far?
I think the Yellow Taboo Mountain one.
Oh, okay.
It's probably my lowest. But this one, for similar reasons. And
this was a tough one because, again, our 4th movie of the day. That's a lot of movies. And it was like the late, 9:30, so it was a little later start. It was also the longest movie of the day, and it is a Japanese sort of courtroom drama. And Like one of the things that like Brandon kind of touched on in the previous for the previous movie is like this cultural component. Like a courtroom drama in the like North American Hollywood context doesn't necessarily bring with it kind of like low energy levels. If anything, it's like the opposite. They're always over exaggerated. Yeah.
Like, objection.
They're like, Your Honor. Like, it's very showy and classic, American fashion, I would say.
And also, too, I want to say
this is completely not that.
The legal turmoil in this movie. My entire thought the whole time, like, this would have to be Japanese for the modesty and the better sense of cultural significance. Because if this was like an American courtroom drama, it would just the whole plot would be like, I'll sue you first. Like, you know, like this movie. From that standpoint makes more sense, but I'll let you.
I like this one more. The kind of the problem again, I feel like with this one is that I'm glad again I read this. I didn't remember when we went yesterday, but the movie tells you that it's a false accusation, which is kind of disappointing. Well, but like the title is almost one thing because you could say like it could be whatever, but it's like the promotional stuff says that, which sucks because the kind of most intriguing part
opening
of me
15
was
minutes.
The opening sort of 15-20 when you get to both sides, and like it opens with this mother's claim of what happened, and it shows it doesn't like I said, like she's standing there and then it cuts
it shows the real actors, the real teacher doing these heinous things, so you buy in immediately. Like this poor kid, you feel the empathy, and then and
you do not like kind of the main character, and then the movie I was
hard.
like, it just completely shows the other perspective, and then just more or less over time goes, this is like what happened.
Yeah, and I think like with a movie like this, and also I should say because this is based on true events. It's based on a book.
It's based on a book. Like I couldn't find any details. It was, but it's based on a book, and then I tried to Google the book, but it seemed very like I don't know.
2003.
Hard to find.
The premise is 2003. A teacher bullies a child. And there's a racial element where he refers to him as having tainted blood because he's got an American grandfather. But he's like the homicidal teacher. He tells the kid to kill himself. And but long story long, I would say from a movie standpoint, from people who watch a lot of movies, that opening 15-20 minutes where you're on the side of the mother with the child. It's so strong, and then when you start to realize, so strong, and it never really quite gets there with the main character. You do have moments where you kind of understand him really well, but when you're eventually so dialed into it that you're like, oh, there's no false perspective here. This is a real event, and there's not going to be like a third act twist or anything because it's a real event.
What the hell is a movie that's came out semi-recently where it was like their story, his story, then the truth?
What was it? I remember the soundtrack, funny enough. It had a 50 Cent song in it.
But like it
Anatomy of a Fall, was it? Or
maybe. But it's something that plays along like those lines where it was like, we expect like their claim, his claim, whatever, but like it's just
three
kind
sides to every story. Is your side, their side, and the truth. And then.
But even when it was showing us his side, there were parts of that I was like, is this exaggerated, right? Because particularly without like giving anything away, the way the mother is portrayed in the mother's story is very like kind of more animated.
Yeah,
and then in his story, the portrayal is very ice and like. And so you're kind of like, I thought that was like a performance nuance of like, he's making her seem very mean and cold and weird. She's making herself seem more like charming and endearing. And it's like, no, she's just very cold and weird.
She's cold and weird, yeah.
And so like, which again, like, okay, that's the truth or whatever. But like, it immediately sort of abandons this idea of like, who's saying the truth? And it's weird. Because like I thought it was one of the most effective setups, like in terms of playing with that idea.
You buy in right away.
Oh yeah, like I did not. I'm like, good luck winning me over to this guy.
We
like,
talked
what's
about
going on?
Title card drops, and this one the theater popped for. Because you live in the characters for 20 minutes, seeing this atrocity happening that he's accused of. And you finally cut to this character in the courtroom after they read his sentencing and all this, and then
this is what you're charged with.
And he's like, "What do you think of these?" And he basically says, I believe everything that was said was complete, act of fiction. It's all a hard cut sham, and everybody was like howling, clapping, standing ovation, and then the rest of the movie never hits that high ever again.
No. And it is like, again, like pacing is kind of, we talked about this last week. It's bled into this conversation here too. Is like it does give me like an awareness of like it is hard to pace a movie. It is. And like, again, like if OBEX was actually 91 minutes, it felt like Oppenheimer or something like Killers of the Flower Moon, these 2-3 hour long movies. Like this one was 2 hours and 10 or something like that, a little over 2 hours anyway. And it probably, again, at least partially, like we can't deny that partially played a factor in that. Was the fact, again, as our fourth movie was later in. But also, like, I do think, like, there was another dude in the theater that was straight up snoring and fell asleep. So it's
front row.
Yeah,
the whole audience clapped and laughed at his snore. It was like big melodramatic reveal in the movie, and you're
yeah. So it was like there was a little awkward chuckles kind of throughout and whatever. But like, so all that to say is I don't think we were the only ones feeling the runtime, and like. There's also like this kind of like there's moments that, again, from like a script level, like we won't give it away, but like where it was obvious, like we're basically getting the same kind of bit twice in a row. And then there was like the fade to black, and then it goes 10 years later. And like I felt Brandon just go like die a little inside. And I did too, to a degree too, especially because that whole like back end section was like, like it didn't really, frankly, it didn't really tell new information, really. And like, honestly, it should have just been, if this is based on true events or whatever,
a title card.
Yeah.
Just fill us in.
This is what happened. Even if it's not based on true events, just show that and make us think.
And again, that's like the cultural thing on like the American crime thriller, real story, court drama.
Yeah.
It would be like Mr. Jones never saw his dog ever again. Like it would just give us some random flash. I think like, and this is part of it too.
It was like another 10-ish minutes maybe that we just didn't need.
I think like the acting and the casting and like a lot of this was fundamentally really good. Like there's moments where he's like having Nick Cage level freakouts because his life's falling apart. He's in a street in like a hurricane weather, and it's very good. I could tell you're
believe it or not.
But like it I think part of it for me is like I feel like, and maybe this is just like Japanese media. As somebody who grew up digesting a lot of anime, I felt like there's some of those same tropes that never really translate well.
You look like you watched a lot of anime in high school. No, like you in high school, not so much.
Oh, me in high,
in high school. That like I never watched anime with you in high school, but the fact that you were watching it on your own or whatever with other friends, that's so checked out.
My dad would bust into the room while I was watching Teletoon at night. I was like, "You watching that Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokio, Digio crap still?" And I was like, "No, Dad, it's Inuyasha." But the point of this story is some of these things in anime don't translate well, and a lot of that I find is like these reluctant protagonists that they're like, again, here's a little drop here for like Evangelion fans. The main character Shinji in that is always like, "Oh, what do I do? I'm worthless. I can't save the world." And it's like 25 episodes straight to that, and you're just like, bro, like be the man.
Time you've done this.
Yeah, and with this movie, with the accusations and the severity, and especially because you feel the severity because you see it play out, having a character that spends a good chunk of the movie being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. And it really, really...
part of the narrative anyway is that like he just kind of went along to get along at the beginning, and that gets used against him and all this stuff. But yeah, so like I do think it must be a cultural thing because it's at least not only this movie but others that I've seen here and last year that have kind of created that sense of me as someone like on me as like that's now an impression that I have, and I think again like. Even for the courtroom like stuff, like it's also like it's not necessarily a slow burn and that it's really like long. You get a lot of like detail and information, but it is so much more subdued and like there are moments that kind of break out of that, but it's just like kind of at these kind of critical points, but like, and they feel to the movie's credit, like effective that way, but it's like everything around that and to build to that, like it just, I think like it is kind of again, like it could be a cultural gap where it's like such staunch, like you win your battles and no one's gonna fight for you kind of thing. Like it's just a North American, I guess, mentality.
To hop on that too, like the favorite bits, which I love because they don't give anything away, but it's just talking about certain scenes that maybe didn't work. Again, with the anime thing, there's a scene where a character gets crucial information in the court case.
Yep.
And the audio cuts. Again, I think in anime, where it's very visual and loud, where this movie is a lot more subtle. It was a cool thing, but that extends the runtime for me 5 minutes until they reveal that in the courtroom in a very, again, flamboyant way. So they had moments of doing like the big courtroom drama thing, right. But specifically, like there's a scene where he's in court and we're waiting to get this court case rolling. There's so much flashback and exposition. Yeah. By the time it gets going, and he goes, I really had a hard time getting a lawyer. Hard cut to a flashback of him finding a lawyer for 30, 40 minutes. Probably 15 minutes. But then the lawyer shows up, and then the lawyer says something. They show
him go get a rejection.
They show everything they say after they say it.
Yeah.
And again, just maybe structurally or culturally. But then this is my big thing that you loved was, near the climax of the movie, the very finale, the lawyer has to solicit this big speech from our main character, and he very stammers his way. I think
they're in the office and they're like, private. Tomorrow you get to do your statement or whatever in court. And so what are you gonna say? And he says it
very, very shy and timidly. Yeah,
but it's it's well acted, it's well written. And then Brandon leans over to me with his eyes, when we got out of the movie, his eyes didn't look that red. But in that moment, I was like, this man was going through it. And he goes, I can't wait for him to go to court and see this whole scene just repeat itself again.
I can't wait for him to repeat exactly what he just told the lawyer in private in front of a judge and jury in a more charismatic way.
And we get it. And again, in a cool oneer, cool. It was basic, but the performance again was it's just a slow zoom. And it was really good. But it was slightly different, but not different enough to justify anything.
And this is my other gripe is we already believe in this character. We already know he's morally right. We already know he's a good guy. So for us to keep being insistent on it, it's a tough thing, especially because it's a real life story. You don't want to make people bad guys or morally gray, but it's I didn't feel the need for this movie to exist in the format they told it, where it becomes very.
Well, but okay, my thing with that was more this is maybe on me as just a viewer and expectations and what I wanted, but the whole point was that you can't be emotional. You have to be you don't if you're too over exaggerated, you're too much, but convey what's going on, but do so very formally. And it's not a victim impact statement. I don't really it's basically his closing statement or whatever. And he's explaining how he's been feeling with the whole thing. And it's just so matter of factly. And that is where again, I feel it's just someone who consumes mostly Hollywood movies or North American movies. It that's the moment where you get a big moment or a showy show of real emotion, and it just it doesn't happen there, and I feel that was just part of the thing in terms of an overall impact for me, was that too of you just want that kind of big emotion.
Yeah, no, I get that, and I would say it's not even so much that I just. I would say another big thing in this movie is the media swaying the trial a little bit, the media's perception of somebody ruining their life. I feel that's something that we've seen a dozen trillion times,
and it was also barely.
It doesn't pay off. There's never. Well, again, I'm getting too into it, but it doesn't really come back full circle. It doesn't really pay off. It's just an element of the story, and again, in today's 2025 landscape, to not trust the media, it's let's also talk about how the sky's blue. Let's also talk about, the most obvious thing. So I felt this movie was a little tired for me. I was tired with it. It was, we've been here before. I think it was very competently made, great performances. For me, like I said, it lacked the theatrics of a good court case or the moral questionability of a more compelling story, because it becomes very black and white all way too soon. I think when you live in that, I can't believe that happened, or I can't believe that person layer of the story is when it thrived. But once you're really strapped in to watch this guy overcome a PR stunt. Basically, you're kind of like, oh, well, I liked it better when I was playing with me more.
The movie peaked, in the
peaked a little
minutes,
early. Peaked in high school.
So
speaking of high school,
that was the last of the 4-day movies. So the last movie, which we've just seen and now are back to talk about, was the school Duel. I'm not gonna lie, this was a movie that when I did my first pass, I was like, absolutely not. And it's not even for like the reasons you're gonna assume. I'm just gonna read the description because I feel like that's the easiest setup we can give this. But also to just give a sense of like what I read, and then we can dig into it, because
why people might not be urgently wanting to see
it's wildly politically charged. But okay, so we'll just go. In a near future dystopian free state of Florida, gun control is outlawed, which I thought was a stupid concept. It's outlawed. Anyway, we'll get into that later. School shootings are at an all-time high. When an opportunity for twisted notoriety arises, a tormented 13-year-old Sammy enlists in a deadly competition called School Duel, which is like a Hunger Games kind of thing.
It's very much like a dystopic conservative America Hunger Games, the movie.
Yes. So the reason I left it off the list was because I felt from the description, I'm totally okay with political commentary in movies. Like, we just did a whole thing on Eddington, like a whole episode talking about that, and there's like that conversation is still raging online and like the Twitter circles that I'm still in. But this was a movie that the reason I was like was that it was so on the nose.
Yeah,
that's what kind of turned me off. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, no, like there's positive reactions. Like, I want to watch this, and like actually, because it isn't interesting enough. Like, I'm curious about it, but it was like, I'm like, this just seems like it's going to be in Florida, and it's like all of the things. Like, I feel like it's a weird through line between the Civil War conversation into Eddington and now into this, and I felt like. I believe I said something to the effect of the movie has the subtlety of a shotgun blast, which again to me like is detrimental to the narrative and like the overall message and the story. Like, with that description, like that tells you basically what you need to know in terms of the perspective and the setup and things like that. Mm-hmm. But which is fine. Like, again, I have no problem with the perspective or anything like that. And like, again, with anything in the States, there's obviously a lot of like political charged stuff going on there, but it did nothing with it that I found at all clever or compelling. And like the way that I was thinking about this kind of coming into this conversation about it was like, it feels like it's stuck in an echo chamber, which is fine. Like, if you read the reviews that love it, it is from people that I'm like openly state like kind of their affinity for the subject matter and whatever else. But it's like so much because like of that inaccessibility that makes like it's fine for the people that are really going to connect with it, but it's certainly not a movie that will impact anyone that doesn't already really strongly agree with it anyway.
I definitely felt that vibe.
Which like it doesn't have to be clear, but like I just, for me as a viewer, I'm like, okay, sure, but like you're not telling me anything interesting. You're not offering an insight that's new. You're not giving a perspective that's new. It's kind of like, like I felt like it gives me that setup. I was worried it wouldn't be subtle, and it wasn't. But there was moments in it that I thought like were clever. I'm like, so you could have probably been a little bit more clever with this, but you just didn't. And that was kind of my big knock on it. Like overall,
it's definitely not a perfect movie, and like you said, it's a product of somewhat like an echo chamber mentality. I definitely pictured a good chunk of people who even just read the description and saw 5 minutes of this movie go, "This is a dystopia. This is Donald Trump's America right now," you know. And I think what I want to say before talking about the movie without giving anything away is, I think the director of this movie has a really good head on his shoulders and came from like a much more centered perspective than people might think. You know, the movie itself, like I said, like you're totally right, but I feel like the way he approached even some of the questions in the Q&A, you know, one guy asked, how you cast such awful people or awful characters.
It took 25 minutes to ask.
Yeah, it was a rough question, and I felt bad for him, but he had a pretty good answer of like, well, like, you know, they're not awful characters, like in the world that they live, and even though there's stuff in here that makes people uncomfortable, you know, this is just the way they are. Like you can tell the school teacher from this like very, again, like religious high school that is very pro-gun, pro-military.
Well, they literally, yeah, like it was like one of the things he called out to in the Q&A was like, he's like, I've sent you to a good Christian public school, and like this could be weird for any Canadian audiences because we have like, well, in Ontario
Catholic
where
schools,
we have publicly funded Catholic high schools, but like in the States that's not a thing. There's
separation of church and state.
Yes, quite literally.
And
so
I feel like this is funny to see, especially after the latest South Park episode, right? Where they're like, you know, it's like you gotta have Jesus back in the school now. Why? And they're like, why is that? Like, well, you know, but the point of this though is I think like before like attacking or getting in on the movie, I would say like the vibe I got from the director, he was. I think to be fair, this does sound like an awesome pitch where you're like, what if Hunger Games in a like hyper conservative school, like, and when I say awesome, I mean I'm not like, you know, hell yeah, but I think leaving Hunger Games as a teen, I remember thinking, what if they just all had guns, you know, like, and I feel like, you know, this does almost feel like you're watching like a high stakes paintball match at some points, and I think like more so the technical elements. It was a first time cinematographer, and he did a great job. I think the way they shot this, it was on like a special. It was like an RE.
I don't remember,
Chrome,
but it was a black and white camera.
Yeah,
and there's only 2 in the world.
Yeah,
and they were using one of them to film. But like, so they film like a lot of movies will film things in different, but they filmed the whole movie in a black and white camera. And so like once you film it in a black and white camera, you're committed to that for the duration. And so
which we'll get into too, because they did say so. It was Kyle Dietz was the name of the cinematographer. His first time doing a feature. They shot it on the RE monochrome, and it's built in. It wasn't just like they're like slap a black and white filter on that. No. They committed to it. I also want to say I've never seen LED strips, or like a modern teen room with LED strips in black and white. I thought that was like a really sharp, and it dawned on me, like I've seen so many LED strips in real life and in movies. To see it in that lens was kind of cool. The way they use screens and technology I thought was really fascinating, where they have these. I want my question.
They're like glass phones.
My question that I was going to ask.
It said the near future too.
It's near future, and you know, I think I brought this up to you guys. You guys were like, that was kind of a silly question. And I was like, no, I just mean like in the sense of they have these see-through phones, and it was cool because I think cinematography-wise, they would shoot through it, so you get like a hyperimposed, and it's obviously again a little on those where it's like what he's watching is really imprinting on him. Yeah, I thought it was really beautiful, and I really liked that they went for like a slightly higher tech near future. And I wondered where they drew the line, other than like the plot conveniences for some of the tech.
Like honestly, for me, it was probably budget if I had to guess.
And that's what I figured, but I wondered if they ever had a version of this where it was like way more blown out or way more contemporary, because I feel like they didn't want it to be like this is Donald J. Trump's America.
Where it kind of blew, like again, I'm assuming was another budget constraint was the pageantry of the show. Like I feel like if you that would be more like it looked like they were just on like a hodged together paintball field kind of, and like, you know, should the thing really exist or whatever, you'd feel like it would be more like flamboyant of a production.
Well, that's where the Hunger Games gets it right too, because it is a huge, but there's also the most twirly mustache evil people. Where here it feels like very real people, and like,
and I'll be honest with you, the setup, like the premise of why that exists, did not work. Like on a conceptual level, like they didn't. It was super unclear. Like, why does this solve a problem, or like why do they pitch it as like solving? I took it
like the same logic as the Purge.
Well, but
you know, like let it air out one time a year, one semester.
But like I feel like yes, like that's that's obviously the idea. But how like they didn't make it clear that like. Again, use dystopian. This is where I feel like it could have like been a little bit more like engaged with that, and like he just goes, "Oh well, we know from like habits," but like how this guy, like the main character, was pegged as a potential school shooter.
Yeah, and because of his online activity.
Yes, and stuff. And I'm like, just again the way that they set this up just was like, I don't know if it was just messier or it like could have been done in a more productive way, but like. Ultimately, they have like there's the king, and then there's the martyrs, right?
Yeah, and I kind of like that too, where they show like a crown of thorns.
Yeah,
and you know the meaning of it after.
Which, like, okay, so this is what I
some
gotta
of the symbolism was
I
a bit
want to
off,
dial
but-
back a little to your comments on the director and like his intent. Because yes, he did try to say like, oh, I tried to make it more like not centrist, but like, you know, like it's not that these things are all bad or whatever,
Yeah,
but
he
like
wasn't anti-religion.
he
or
only kind of presented all of it in a way that was as such.
Felt a
And
little
so like
extreme, yeah.
the and this is what I mean about like the bluntness of the shotgun, or like, you know, dude brought a sledgehammer to a tack fight. Like it was just one of those things where it was like it just was the literal bottom of the barrel, like in terms of like, again, Florida religious public schools. Like I thought that was funny, but like it doesn't do anything with that particularly like flushed out or interesting. It just like, we'll have this and we'll have that, and it just checks a lot of boxes. And for me, it was like, again, I feel like maybe coming off of Eddington and having this conversation, and still to this day, like we're 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever, out from that movie being kind of out wide for people to talk about. And like, I'm still reading interpretations, people arguing about whether it's to both sidesing or it's obviously not doing that. Yeah. And it's like, it is so, like, I mean, maybe to the detriment of the movie, maybe I've seen other people argue like it's so nuanced that everyone is able to find whatever they want in it. But like, again, just like a complete lack of subtlety makes this just feel like kind of flat, and it doesn't tell you like anything new. And again, like one of the things that I kind of liked with like the Eddington side of that was like really letting people project onto the movie. Yeah. And this movie does not at all allow for that. It's very like, here's what to think, and this is like, and which again, like, it's not that the message even is wrong. It's that like just the package in which you've put it. Yeah. Or again, like it's not, you didn't come at this from a different angle. You didn't try to do anything kind of new or interesting. Like you just took the kind of general conceptions and were like, that's good enough.
I do agree with a lot of that. And I think we were talking about this earlier, where it's like the one thing that like on talking politics, like politically, any conservative leaning people in the media never get movies. They never get it right. Like you think Ben Shapiro reviews a movie, and it's like
right-wing takes on movies.
It feels like he's missed half the movie, and he's just chosen the most like headlineable, clickbaitable, like the woke mob's ruining this, you know. And I feel like with this movie, I almost do get the sense that it will always be buried by the burden of the subject matter it's depicting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like they did mention that they were struggling to get
find distribution, and it probably doesn't help. It's all black and white,
which is like, yeah. Well, it's not a commercial movie,
no.
But also, which like is again totally fine. It's not a knock. Like again, like the things, the black and white, like we talked a little bit about it, like that to me really worked. It helps create sort of the atmosphere that he said he wanted, and it does that well.
More like totalitarian.
Yeah, and like how he said he wants it to, like it's in the near future, but he wants it to feel like the past, and like we're going backwards and all of that, which is
was
totally
effective. I think visually
well.
Very effective and thought out. But yeah, I think you're like from a story point.
Yeah,
it's hard, especially like for example, like the actor that played the coach. He was there at the screening.
Yep,
really lovely guy. But his character, I felt like didn't get as much as I hoped. I thought I was going to get from him. Like it really is. It's actually, I'd say it's the Legion guy, the guy the old army guy in this movie. Again, without spoiling it. But I found he's
like the recruiter for like this.
So impactful, so engaging, so like funny, and also like that's probably my not favorite character, but he's a character that I felt like had the most complexity to him. Mm-hmm. Like the scene with the dog tags and the way he spins it, like it's, I think some of the character writing in this was really good, but some of the other stuff maybe didn't come through as much. And I think largely I like the big swing that the movie was going for, but I did find, like you said, it's tough because even the Q&A at the end, there's only time for 2 questions, which felt a little suspicious to me. But both questions were very
I could tell. So the next movie was supposed to start. I could see the person because.
But I mean, like, the question's definitely like, I feel like the interviewer was probably trying to hold out from getting into the politics of it. Like, it's very much like, oh, the black and white, and immediately the audience was
the Montreal Canada
crowd.
Audience. I don't think there was any.
And so I think I wanted to see more from this guy, and I think his movie.
That's why I've come negative on this. I think overall I should clarify that I mixed on it. Because there were things there, I thought there was kind of these moments where I'm like, oh, that was clever, and which again just sort of exacerbated some of my other issues with it. But
it's also extremely fresh. Like Eddington, we digested for a week or 4 or 5 days before. But
I still feel very again, it's very fresh, but there is zero to think about.
Yeah,
it's not a movie it doesn't challenge anything, and I feel like and it doesn't add anything new. Which I feel like that's kind of the duality of these kinds of things is I feel like something like Eddington or again Civil War makes such an active, we talked about this last time, such an active choice to try and instead of it being just Texas and Florida have started fighting against the Democratic government or whatever, it's Texas and California, so it goes so apolitical. And then this one is just like I said, it's oh, of course it's Florida, of course it's it could have been either of those two, but it's just the easy kind of low hanging version of this. And so again, I did not like that part, but it wasn't to say that it didn't do those things effectively. But again, even on that front, when the whole thing starts, when the actual school duel starts, the first part feels a little bit more horrific. Of actual children shooting each other and all of that. And then the second one, they had this moment that I thought was really kind of it made me laugh, but in a morbid I can't believe they just did that way, because they play it almost like a triumphant.
Yeah, the kid finds his footing, but now it's also it has the slow mo
killing other kids.
Yeah, it's a tough one too, because I honestly I always do this with movies. I'm always trying to predict stuff, but I really was almost expecting the duel to be nearly instantaneous, and the movie ends when our character, who was not the best, brightest, strongest guy.
Yeah, he's just he's the younger one too. Everyone else is a little older and meatier, and this kid's supposed to be 13. He looks he's literally like a toothpick. There's a scene where he's flexing in front of the mirror, and I was like, does the kid have arms?
I was going to say on that note
tiny
too,
little guy,
good.
I like them.
Yeah, great, good. He was really good in it. But I found it kind of interesting because this is a weird segue, but the antagonist bully in the school at the start of the movie, they spent all this time making you empathize with our main character and hating him.
Yeah.
Only for him, his only real consequence is to not be the one that gets to go to the duel.
Yeah.
And then he kind of falls off. And I felt like, if this was a Hunger Games situation where you pick two and then he's his antagonist in it, that may have been a stronger connection. But on that note, that kid looked a lot like Clay Jensen from 13 Reasons Why. And then when they're doing the Q&A at the end, he was talking about how the 13 Reasons Why show spiked a lot of teen suicides, and in a very roundabout way, and I hope I'm not misremembering this, but he was saying part of the reason why they would like the black and white is because younger kids aren't as interested in it, which means that if this had a negative effect, it would be less likely. But again, that talks about the distribution where it's hard to sell a black and white movie to people these days.
Well, and that's kind of
a little confusing even on that end, where you wonder. The choices, I think, are effective in some ways, but with Fantasia, you see a lot of movies and you wonder where's the business mind at in some of these, where it's how much of a passion project is this versus a producer who's no, you can't include a 20-minute cutaway to a Freddy Krueger movie. They'll never license that. You know what I mean?
Well, I think, this thing, and I think what I like most about that is that this is also the first crack for a lot of movies too.
Yeah.
So where things can get done, Shelby Oaks was Chris Stuckman's movie. We saw it and it just got acquired by Neon the day was set to debut at the festival or the day before, and then since then a bunch of it is a bunch they gave it a bunch of money for reshoots and whatever. So we'll see what that looks like in October, but But like again, when this kind of like the question for me lingering for this is like he did say you were right. Like yeah, it was part of that was like it's like it's not for kids. It's just like using them in that context of like as the message. But I'm like, but again, like who is this for? And it's this kind of political commentary, which is again like totally on board for. But it's like you're only like again you're talking to your echo chamber. Like the only people that will find anything in this are just people that already agree and will take nothing from this and nothing new. And then again, like, and all the people will just can easily dismiss it as like, who cares? It's whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just feel like it's kind of lost, I guess, in that. So I'd be curious because it was dedicated to someone too, which I was like hoping someone would ask. But again, there was such a brief Q&A. But like, you know, was that for a particular reason and whatever else? Because obviously that would kind of make more sense. Because like, it's not that it has to have a particular audience or anything like that, but I'm curious, like, what really were you trying to get conveyed with this? Because again, if it's like, oh, how horrific is this kind of stuff? But it's like, you undercut that yourself a little bit. So
well, and I would say again, the Q&A I got a lot of value out of. Again, I think movies like this, the conversation around it is as fascinating as the movie itself sometimes, unfortunately. But I liked at the end when he was talking about how they approached Hulk Hogan to be the governor character, but obviously politically, you know, Hulk Hogan was like, this would be a bad look for me, so he didn't. And Hulk Hogan was like essentially Tampa, Florida hometown hero for him. And you know, so I think that was kind of an interesting beat. Instead, they got Oscar from The Office. The actor who plays him really dug the idea of it, and he's a good fit in it. Like he plays a very, you know,
he's only in like one real moment, but it was good.
It was a good moment. It added a little bit of like the familiarity, or like, oh, they got that guy here. So yeah, it's a tough movie to review, and I think again, like the vibe watching it was a bit off because it does make you kind of compassionate towards a character who is like school shooter coded. And you know, I think it's more, I feel like I almost felt like I was more tied into the story of like a young boy being radicalized a little bit. I thought that was probably where the movie had the most sympathy in a way, where he was so manipulated. Like, and there's so many scenes like he's at like the Legion signing the paperwork about like, it felt very much like the message of like how the army does draft you at 17 when you,
they talk like it's literally
it's
a
not
line.
sex, it's just violence, mom. And she's like, okay, honey.
Well, not even that. They talk about like when the teacher and I can't remember the guy's name, but the Legion guy that recruits the kid, he's like, do you think that when they like send us to war, we're the best and the brightest and the cream of the crop? Like, no, like we picked this guy for a reason, and it's bodies, it's numbers. And like again, like that's one of the bits where I was like, like, you know, and but again, like that's where I felt like from a world perspective, it was like unclear, because it's like, if the obvious intent of the idea of like the Hunger Games thing is like, oh, we just get a bunch of kids that are potential school shooters and get them to all to fight on an island, like it's not that. There's some characters that are there that are meant to be like, you know, it's convenient. They say this is the beginning of the movie. It's convenient that it's always seemingly this all-American kid that, you know, wins. But like there was like options there, and it's like it just like again that lack of clarity. Like if the program was to exist, it would be because the effects are known. So if a kid gets recruited, and like again they like undercut it that like, oh well, because you're 13 now, we don't have to get like talk to your parents about it. And I was like, okay, it didn't work.
Also, the mandatory consent that the mother has to give when like the military shows up to her house and forces her to watch it. You know what I mean? There's a layer there where it's almost like the government now, when this movie is pitched, you know, in that freedom sense, you know, things like Freedom Bell or whatever, you know, it is funny. It's like, you know, a libertarian wants less government, and you think libertarians are these pro-gun people, and here it is where it's like, no, watch this state-sponsored, you know, Fox News covered, you know. Anyways, I think is a complex movie, but unfortunately, it didn't.
It's not a complex movie. That's
complex to talk about, but I don't think it executed.
It had a bunch of things in it. It was all, but it states it all outright. Some of those ideas were like, again, good, but it was again the subtlety of.
I do wonder too, like if they didn't do the kind of cliche of like it was all. Well, sorry, I don't want to spoil the movie, but you know when they hint at certain things. But I wonder if they went in more direction of the character achieving a goal and finding that goal to be less idyllic than he thought it would be.
Yeah.
You know, more of a coming of age with a very violent, you know, transition.
Yeah.
But the way it kind of pans out, I didn't feel as much as I thought I was going to when I felt like they were setting it up in a very realized world. But like you said, it's not subtle at all. And yeah, but I totally agree with you on most of it. I did find myself appreciating it just for the swing at it, like to just be like, Black Mirror school shooter episode, go. You know, it has maybe the same depth as that, but I do think it is fascinating. And again, I do think the director had like he seemed like a really nice guy, and I am really happy to see that he had the passion to see making this movie through, even if again like it didn't, you know, if it didn't land for you and for me. But I think he seemed like a really good guy, and you know, it touches a lot on it where it's like we're in these really weird times, and a movie like this is even worse to put out now, and part of me kind of wonders why do it, but you know, he was very adamant that.
Well, that's what I said. I wonder on the personal side. If there's a link there, and like again, it's totally like it's not that like it has to have a reason, but it was just like I'm just lost. Like I don't know where you wanted that to go, what you were really aiming with it, and like again, not that it doesn't color the viewing experience. You don't need to know that. But when I was ended, it was like, okay, but what?
I do feel bad because you said this earlier in this episode of like stop talking about streaming stuff. But I really do think like, and I feel bad because this is sort of how I sound on a lot of stuff adjacent. But if this was trimmed down to a top tier Black Mirror episode, the conversation and the acceptability of it almost might be built in because they're like, do you see that one really controversial episode? And it would be. It
wouldn't be controversial. Like, again, to me, the Eddington controversy is so much more interesting. It's so much more interesting because I've seen because you can project onto the movie. Yeah. I'm seeing an interesting conversation, a bunch of them actually, where this would literally be like, it would trigger this cliched basic thing would trigger the basic, like if it were to get on something like that, it would just be like, the usual outrage from the usual suspects, the usual praise from the usual suspects, and it would be gone in the next day when some other news story took it over, and that would be it. Like it like again, it doesn't have anything interesting. It doesn't like have that kind of like lasting thing where it's like again, like I'm like it's very clear, and it's like okay, like I said, I wanted it to be good. It didn't quite get there. But like I said, I'm hopeful. Like, I would be definitely down to see more reps. Like there's still again things that I liked about this. It's just like
and visually for a first time cinematographer too. Yeah. I think the movie visually
that was crazy. It's like his first movie. Like, damn,
blew me away. Yeah, I again
all right, boy.
A lot of the like computer shots, technology. Again, the black and white of it was again a really bold choice. But yeah, I think visually really strong at least. And I would like to see more, and I would like to see this director do something that's maybe a little bit easier to sell because I don't like I've seen worse movies than this by a long shot. Like this is definitely by no means a bad movie. So School Duel, all in all, I did like the title, very catchy. The movie itself,
is a good title.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue, and I think it's nice because this genre, the Hunger Games-esque genre, which again I think was kind of solidified by the movie Battle Royale. I think it's a Toho movie, Japanese movie.
Never seen it.
Bunch of kids on an island. I think an island. Remote location. They have to kill each other. That one, I think it's it's a real Battle Royale, like Fortnite, where they're scavenging to find stuff. Unlike the Hunger Games, they'll find a gun that someone's tucked away in a cabin or whatever.
Right.
And you get like murderous gangs of teens. I recommend Battle Royale a lot. This movie, it's the conservative nightmare Battle Royale. It's a tough one to review for me at least, but I did think that it was a unique watch at Fantasia Fest. I'm glad I saw it.
It's definitely a lot of like different than anything.
Glad we had a Q&A. Glad we got to hear from the actors a little bit. I do think it was a great Fantasia Fest experience, but again, the movie I'm a bit mixed on, and I'm glad we got to talk about it. And do you have any?
I was stoked to meet the kid from the Holdovers, dude. That was that like made my day. I was like, I adore that movie, and so I was like, look, I'm like, because so we should say when we got there, right?
Shook everyone's hand.
We
met the
literally
director.
got in line as like the cast and crew were doing handshakes, just thanking everybody for being there, and I like shook his hand, and I'm like, that kid looked kind of familiar, and I like couldn't quite figure it out. And then he's only in like one real kind of, he's got a main kind of chunk of the movie that he's in.
It's a bit role, but it's very impactful.
Yeah.
He was good in the small time he had on screen.
Again, really, it was like one of the more effective uses, but he's perfect because he's in a similar, okay, sorry, I should rewind that.
Not a
similar situation, but his utility, his utility as a character was sort of like this poor, like meek, little guy, and
they did well with the casting.
Nailed that. But I was like, as soon as that part, I was like, holy shit, that's the guy from The Holdovers. So I met somebody from The Holdovers.
And I do want to address my bias a little bit.
You know what? Sorry, I'll always be grateful to this movie for that.
Yeah. True, and Fantasia Fest.
Exactly.
I say again, the beauty of Fantasia Fest is walking around with my lanyard, like a high school gym teacher with my gym shorts, my shirt, my high socks you can't see. But walking the streets, every time I see someone with a lanyard, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, we're in a real community.
One of us.
But I think we saw the director walking by, and I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh, this guy seems like a chill dude. And then he walking in, like, because we walked in right at the time, shook all the director cast hands. And we're like, oh, and so, say we will the movie, I immediately felt like, oh, this director seems like a chill dude I could hang with.
He did, yeah.
So my own bias, I was like, what a nice guy, based on like 2 glances and a handshake. And even in the movie, there's like, nice handshake, as a bit in the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, on that alone, I was like,
handshake.
Yeah, you could tell from this review, I was like, like, what was this? Mostly because I was like, yeah, that guy seemed like a chill dude. I don't want to talk ill. But again, I think your talking points are all really valid and it's tough
also like none of it's like, dude,
personal.
If I tried to make a fucking movie, it'd be the worst thing. Like this guy, like again, it's not a bad movie. It's literally just like it's kind of the thing where like I hate. You've called us this before, and I've told you I've bristled at it, and I think maybe I've also said it because it's just a term that's used, but like a critic, and I hate the concept because it's like. I'm not coming from a place of a creator. Like you at least have made a short film
and hated it every moment of it.
I thought it was great. Not making it. I loved watching it though. But like I like, so even that you have an angle, like I purely came out of this, like, I mean, it's in the name, the Screen Love Affair. I just love movies. And like,
if you've ever fallen for a film.
Exactly. Like that's kind of for anyone that's ever fallen in love with a movie. This is kind of the place. And like, that's kind of the atmosphere I bring it in. And again, like the dude was super nice and,
very like, open to questions, especially in a movie like this.
And it was an open book, and like you mentioned that it was cut short. I really do believe. I think it was just like a timing thing and all of that. But like, this is the kind of thing where it's like I say none of this with ill will. Like I don't like. I'm not mad at this movie. I didn't hate this movie. Again, my rating was mid, not because I thought the movie itself was even that mid. It was that I was like unsure. I was mixed about it. But like, there's been movies that I've aggressively hated. If you listen to last week at the first episode on Fantasia, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I actually would recommend Bambi over that other movie. Find Your Friends or whatever. Hated it. But this is something where it's like, I say none of that with malice or anything like that, because I think part of it too is that like this guy, it was an interesting start for sure. Like, I don't know if this was his first feature or anything like that, but it's all said with the idea of like, this is what didn't work for me. And that's, just like, again, not that I expect any of the listener watch this either, but like, it's not said with that intent either, right? It's like, again, Find Your Friends, I was kind of being intentionally mean because it was such an egregious abuse of my time. This was not that.
You say that like 30, 40 movies deep too, Dude,
that was, I think, my like fourth
low point.
Movie.
Yeah. You were like I'm not sure if I want to criticize or watch more movies for like 12 hours. You need a cool down. Yeah, it's also funny too, because I feel like thematically, and we talked about this, where it's like the third or fourth movie you see in a day, you're already going to either have such highs or lows of that day that it's hard to go in and be, not tired. And you're very aware of this, where you're like, what was I over movied at that point? I'm like, no, dude, this is my second movie fresh-eyed talking about OBEX. But yeah, to close out on the closeout, I want to say that what I love about the name of Screen Love Affair is like, we joked about this where I was like, oh, I was overstimulated after 6 movies in 2 days. And you're like, oh, well, you just you don't have the same affair. I'm like, no, dude, an affair is quick and discreet sometimes. You have a screen marriage. I have a screen love affair. I have a passionate thing that flares up, and I don't always feel good about it when I obsess or dislike. But yeah, no, I think that's the beauty of it. The beauty of our time together to talk about movies is, I think Screen Love Affair is a name that I thought was like, okay, but the longer we've done this, I've been like, what a solid way to reference it. No, a solid tagline for, again, like if you've ever fallen for a film, because that's how it works. You go into a movie, sometimes you don't really know what you're getting out of it. And then when you leave, sometimes you're like, I fell for that movie. And there's been times where I like The Materialist. When I left that,
well, it hits you in places that's the beauty of the movie.
I fell for that movie, and again,
and I never would have guessed that.
And it's like real relationships where like you and Adriana are like, I don't know if that movie was right for you, and I'm like, it made me feel like I haven't felt in so long. So I love the simplicity of it. Though.
I love that too, because I think that's something like worth discussing. Is that because it was like obviously before I started this, I was really mulling over like, what do I want to call it? What do I want to call it? And just kind of waiting to hear something that sounded right.
Yeah,
that was like, it was honestly not to bring Dutch up, but that's how we named Dutch. Like Ty, I told Ty, just throw names at me, like whatever you think of, and when I hear it, I'll know it. And he said that, like, he would say whatever other suggestions I don't even remember, but I was like, no. And then he said Dutch, and I went. And so, like, that was, I like, sort of a similar process. But, like, for me, it really is, like, that's the medium. Like, people talk about music and whatever the kind of art that you love. But, like, for me, it was movies. Because I'm not an artistic guy. I'm not a creative guy that way. But, like, this is the most anything makes me feel is in movies. And it covers such a range. I'm sure, like, every other art form. But it's the one that, like, really connects with me most. And, I just... for the love of the game.
Love of the game. And I meant to squeeze this in earlier, but talking about somebody who doesn't create, but only critics can't do, so they criticize kind of thing.
Yeah.
You were with me in Mexico when I would sneak off to the all-you-can-eat buffet and edit my short film. And so
while I was sleeping in.
Yeah, so watching a lot of these movies, and again, the OBEX thing was the most, for me, what made me stick with or think about or trip myself in the headspace of the filmmaker, who, again, I wish I was there because I would have actually genuinely loved to hear about or talk. But yeah, it's like, somebody who's tried to create, and to my own opinion, not been able to find it. I shoot a lot of weddings, and that's artful and beautiful. However, to create something from scratch and to make something a feature length, it's a miracle.
The
any
love
movie gets
story
made.
Has already been written by the time you come around.
And so
all of that.
All criticisms aside, it's a miracle anything gets made. And even if this movie wasn't perfect, or like you said, it lacked in ways that you can't, or I can't fully come to terms with at the moment, because we just saw it, for me at least. But it's a miracle anything gets made, and I hope so many of these movies at Fantasia do find a home, a distribution. I know you were joking about earlier, but some of these things I think would hit for certain people on streaming. And so, and again, having a theater experience too might also, kind of like comedy, when you watch a video clip, sometimes it doesn't always land because you're not in the room. And I think it's been such a great community experience at this Fantasia Fest to see and hear, and it makes me want to fall back in love with the idea of creating again, which I hate. I hate creating because it's terrible. So huge kudos to all the filmmakers and everybody that comes out to support, because I think it's lovely that we could exist in our country and have such a time in such a fun place, Montreal. Like it's the most Canadian of all of our cities, like coming from Toronto, it's like, fam, I gotta say this place is great. Cause I gotta practice it for doing it on air, but so,
Please
again,
don't.
I hope this part 2 Fantasia video, has been entertaining to some. I hope people who have, seen some of these movies, probably in the same screenings as us, get any entertainment out of this. So, do you want to close this out with a little horror story?
All I'll say is that, I really love the opportunity to cover the festival, and like I said, see so many movies that never would have hit my radar, or and if anything, I really hope just by adding our voice, not necessarily that even the video gets seen, but even if that little bump in SEO or whatever, because we post about something that we contribute to the conversation, that hopefully helps something happen for one of these movies or a filmmaker or whatever. And that really, again, not to tie it back to the name, but like that's kind of the whole thing is like we're here because we love this. It's totally a choice. Like, you know, there's no one's forcing us to be here. We wanted to be here. And I think, like, you know, like I've been so encouraged by so much of what I've seen, and I love the spirit of so many of these movies. And it's just an absolute blast. But like, I mean, and again, for the theatrical experience, like this is, if you've lost that sense of like, I don't know, I just stream it, I just wait for streaming, come see a Fantasia movie and you will see what you're missing. And it doesn't even matter if the movie is good or bad. This crowd will make you remember why that's such an imperative part. But if while you're at the theater, you're not enjoying the movie, or maybe you're just tired, you've had a long day, who knows the reason.
Gauntlet of four movies in a day.
Exactly. Maybe, well, not to say, I don't want the impression to be that this was one of us, because it wasn't.
It was not.
But if you are, for some reason, going through it, and you also are a snorer, and you fall asleep in the movie, just leave. Just leave. Or if you're with that person and your friend is sleeping and snoring, try to like keep them awake so they don't loudly snore at a particular point in a movie that's supposed to play very serious and all of that, and kind of completely undercut a moment for a laugh. But yeah, so if you're tired and you just really can't stay awake, either sleep silently or just leave.
Or more importantly, if you're the friend of that person, wake them up before they start snoring, because that's a courteous friend to everybody in the theater.
Exactly.
So thanks for watching.